All right, hey, what's going on? Charles Austin here, and let's be fit forever. So, today I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about cholesterol, right? Uh, may not sound super fancy, maybe a word that you've heard a whole lot about. Probably always heard that it's always bad, but let's see if we can get into the nitty gritty of all of those things, all right? But like always, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel so that you're always up to date with my latest content. Remember, live streams every Monday and Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time, and also on the weekends, Saturdays at 1 p.m. Central Time, all right? So, like I always like to do, let's dive right on in, and let's start off just by defining exactly what cholesterol is, right? So, what is this stuff? Okay, so as we see here, and I'm just gonna slide myself over just a little bit. There we go. And actually, I'm gonna go all the way to the top. Woo-hoo. So as we see here, cholesterol is basically just this waxy, semi-solid substance, right? And it floats around in our blood, right? And as you see, it's not necessarily bad. Okay, so your body needs it to build cells, make vitamins, and other hormones, right? So as we can see here, cholesterol is needed to make vitamin D. Obviously, we go out in the sun to help our bodies create vitamin D, and also cholesterol helps with that as well. Hormones like testosterone and estrogen as well need cholesterol to be produced by the body. And as we see here, it also helps make these fat dissolving bile acids. And this is basically a way for your liver to help process and break down fat, which will come up here in just a second, right? So now, where do you get cholesterol from, right? Well, it mainly comes from two sources, okay? So your liver, like we just talked about a second ago, your liver and your intestines as well, they pretty much make all of the cholesterol that your body actually needs, okay, to continue to make hormones, vitamins, etc., right? Now, the rest of cholesterol, if you're ever going to add any extra cholesterol to your body, the way you're going to get that is from the foods from animals, right? So, animal products. So, that means meat and dairy, cheese, stuff like that, okay? You're not going to be able to go and bite into anything that grows from the earth, any type of plant, and get cholesterol from that, right? But there are ways that certain types of plants and the ways we eat plants can increase your cholesterol, and we will talk about that in a second. But like I said here, meat, poultry, dairy, etc., right? So here's some examples, right? So again, we got eggs, cheese, shellfish are some examples, steak and beef, right? Organ meats. I don't know if I've ever had any organ meats, but we're talking about like if you like to eat hearts, kidneys, and livers, right? Hey, but cholesterol there as well. Sardines and yogurt. Those are just some of the examples, right, of ways that we can actually get cholesterol in our body, right? So as we go in, I mentioned just a few seconds ago that in addition to actually eating animal products, meat and dairy, there are ways that you can add cholesterol to your body if you are eating other plant sources as well, right? So if you're eating foods that are high in saturated or trans fats, what happens is that causes your body, your liver, to create more cholesterol, right? In order to process those fats. So just a second ago, we talked about the fact that we know cholesterol is needed to help dissolve fat. All right, let's say it again. All right, we absolutely need cholesterol. Okay. Oops, how did I go up? Sorry. We absolutely need cholesterol to dissolve and break down fat. So again, if you're consuming a diet that is high in saturated fat, high in trans fat, and also sugar, right? So if we're drinking lots of sodas and eating lots of cakes and candies and things like that, those unused carbohydrates eventually get stored by the body as fat. And now we're telling our liver, hey, we need more cholesterol in order to break down that fat. So again, if we go back to our list, other foods, fried foods, right? So when you start adding all the oils, if you're frying potatoes, right? If you're frying cauliflower, whatever it is, you may say, hey, potato's a vegetable, cauliflower is a vegetable. Well, once you start frying in all these oils, you kind of start ruining it, right? So also, obviously fast food, lots of fast food is going to be high in fat, high in sugar. Okay. Processed meats. So as you see here, bacon, hot dogs, sausage, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Desserts, again, high in sugar. So again, the ways we can add extra cholesterol to our body is number one, we're going to be consuming food sources that come from animals. We're talking meat and dairy. But we can also consume saturated fat foods and also lots of sugar, right? So what is the good and the bad behind cholesterol, right? So I don't necessarily like the way we label, our types of cholesterols, but I'm going to explain why they get labeled that here in just a couple minutes. But if you were to go and get a lipid panel, right? Let's say you go to your doctor and you want to get a blood panel done, right? So generally what will happen is they'll take some blood, they'll draw some blood, and they will test it and they'll run it, and you'll get your results. They'll tell you about your level of blood glucose. They'll tell you about your triglycerides. They'll tell you about your total cholesterol levels. And they'll also start breaking down HDLs, LDL cholesterol. They'll even give you ratios between the two, right? So what I want to do real quick is just kind of explain what those LDLs and HDLs actually are and what they mean, and what that means for your body, right? So again, LDL. Long story short on LDL, it's sometimes labeled bad cholesterol simply because one of the things that it does is it helps contribute to fatty buildups in your arteries, right? So over time, those fatty buildups can help narrow your arteries, restrict blood flow, cause your heart to work harder to pump blood throughout the body. And because of those things, it will increase your risk for heart attack, stroke, as well as peripheral artery disease as well. And this basically just means that you're having issues with circulating blood throughout your body. We could get into that another day, right? So that's why it's sometimes referred to as bad, right? But in a second, I'll go over why that doesn't necessarily mean it's not always the case. But just for general purposes and just remembering the differences between cholesterol, we'll call it bad for now, right? HDL cholesterol is a different type of cholesterol here as well. It's sometimes referred to as good, or sometimes people use the H and we'll say helpful. All right, a good way to remember HDL cholesterol, right? And the good thing about this is it literally helps take away the blockages in your arteries, and it sends it back to your liver for processing so we can get it out of the body. Okay, so again, LDL helps clog arteries, and HDL helps unclog arteries. Okay, so obviously, if we're thinking about those two, which one do we want more of? Well, it's clear we want to have more HDL. Okay, now let's get into levels. Again, I said a second ago, if you were to go have a health screening, get a blood panel done by your doctor, they're going to test glucose and cholesterol and all that good stuff. So what should these numbers be, right? And specifically to cholesterol, right? So the reason why I pulled up this page here, I like how it kind of did a separation of age as well as gender, right? Because as we age, our numbers change, our requirements in our levels change a little bit. And that's also for younger individuals, they kind of have a different set of numbers as well, right? So if we start here, if you're one of the young folk out there, 19 and younger, give or take a few years, whatever, you really shouldn't have any issues with cholesterol if you're an average, normal, healthy teenager or adolescent, right? You shouldn't have any issues with cholesterol. So as you can see here, your total number should be less than 170, right? And then they also give you some numbers on HDL. We want this more than 45, and LDL less than 100, right? So now when we start getting into adults, and I'm actually going to just combine men and women here just for, time's sakes for today. But generally, you're going to want to stay less than this number here, 200. Okay, they kind of gave you a range. This is basically telling you that you don't want to get too low. And that's what I'm about to talk about here in just a few seconds. But generally, the maximum for your total cholesterol number should be less than 200. Okay. Now, let's get into, like I said a second ago, the reason why I don't necessarily like these labels with good and bad. Let's talk about that here just for a couple minutes. So, sometimes, and again, these numbers are for, average, normal, healthy adults with no pre-existing conditions, no underlying health problems, no disease, no disorders, right? We're talking about normal, healthy adults, right? So in some cases, some people are predisposed to have higher cholesterol numbers, right? So some people actually have a total cholesterol number in, above 200. It could be 300, could be 400. I've seen levels myself. I've done health screenings myself, and I've seen numbers as high as 400 or 500, right? So on face value, you may look at that and say, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to stay less than 200. It says it right there. But again, we did talk about the differences between HDLs and LDLs, and generally, okay, I use that word generally, it's not always the case, but generally, if somebody has a genetic predisposition for high cholesterol and they have, higher total cholesterols, generally their HDL is also going to be really high too. So what does that mean? Well, you're going to have a high level of HDLs, which means you're removing this LDL out of your body. Remember, we talked about it here, where HDL literally carries cholesterol away from your arteries. Okay, so in those cases, a lot of times, even though the total number may be high, and you may say, "Oh no, that's not a good thing," generally, their HDL is going to be really, really high as well. So if your cholesterol is higher than 200, now it's time to start thinking about, is my HDL and LDL in a good balance? Okay, so if your total cholesterol is well above 200 and your HDL and LDL is not in balance, not a good thing. Okay, so we want to make sure that these numbers are always in a good balance. Nice high number here, nice low number here as they relate to each other with those ratios. All right, so let's talk about symptoms. All right, what are some of the symptoms associated with let me find my spot. Associated with high cholesterol, right? So, scrolling around here, trying to find my spot. There it is, right? Generally, and this is the case with a lot of different things. This is the case with diabetes. This is the case with high blood pressure, right? Generally, there is no symptom. Like, you don't wake up in the morning and say, "Oh no, my cholesterol is acting up. I need to take a nap." "Oh no, my cholesterol is acting up. Let me do some stretching or whatever," right? Nobody really wakes up and has those, situations, right? Generally, the only way to figure out what your levels are is to have that blood panel done that we've already talked about, right? So some of the things that you may notice, right, is you could notice chest pain, right? You could, unfortunately, suffer a heart attack, right? Sometimes, some individuals, a heart attack is literally the first sign that something's wrong. And, obviously you hope that, the person that may suffer that makes it out of that, but sometimes they don't. So unfortunately, sometimes a heart attack or even a stroke is the first sign that something's wrong, right? So there generally aren't any symptoms. Generally, it's the complications. So I encourage everybody, hey, get your numbers, get your blood test done so you know exactly where you are, right? So risk factors, basically a risk factor just says, hey, if you're any of these things here, it increases your chances of having unhealthy cholesterol levels, right? So poor diet, obviously we talked about that as the ways we increase our cholesterols with the meat, dairy, fried foods, and sugar, right? Obesity as well, lack of exercise, smoking literally damages your arteries, too much alcohol, and then obviously as we age, things tend to get a little bit worse, right? So these are all risk factors for unhealthy cholesterol levels. So keep those in mind as we move on here, right? So I did want to pull this up just to kind of give you an image, right? Let me zoom in here before we move into how do we stop this, right? So as you can see, I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit more. As you can see, this is how your artery should look. And there's no such thing as a perfect artery. We all have little small deposits here and there of stuff over time. And these things kind of have wears and tears just as we age, right? But generally, you should be looking like the top area, right? This is kind of where we want to be. But unfortunately, over time, with our habits and our behaviors, there's lots of folks that are walking around with this right here, okay? And keep in mind the importance of this image. All right, this is literally showing a blood vessel, and remember, blood has to travel through these alleyways, if you will, these pathways. They have to travel through these blood vessels in order to send nutrition and oxygen throughout our entire body. So if you see that this opening is starting to close, now again, it's harder to get the blood through. So it's harder to deliver oxygen. It's harder to deliver nutrition throughout the body. Now it's harder to deliver white blood cells to help fight infection. It's harder to deliver hormones. It's harder to deliver everything that's in blood that our body needs in order to function and be healthy. Okay, and again, like we said, this overstrains your heart over time, which increases your blood pressure, increases your risk for heart attack and stroke. And then, unfortunately, sometimes blood clots may form because now there's blood that's starting to pool and kind of stay in that same area, and now we have these clots form. And unfortunately, sometimes these things can travel to different parts of the body and cause damage. So again, this is what we want, but a lot of us are so focused on how good food may taste, and we like to sit down too much and do these things. Now we're looking like this, and that's not what you want, right? So let me zoom back out here. There we go. And so how do we fix this, right? Let's go ahead and wrap this video up here in the next couple minutes. How do we fix unhealthy cholesterol levels? Let's say you get your blood panel done and you say, oh no, my levels are above 200, my HDL is too low, my LDL is too high, right? Well, there are things you can do. So what I want you to do is just focus real quick on these last few minutes, because in my experience as a nutritionist and a coach and a trainer, lots of times clients, former clients, the first thing they normally do is they go straight to the doctor with their, high cholesterol numbers, and the doctor sends them straight to medication. Now, I am not 100% against medication. There are some scenarios where medication may actually be needed. There may be times where you actually need to get those cholesterol levels down fast. There may be times where you need to stop the rise of cholesterol levels. But medication is not something you want to say, hey, I want to be on this for the rest of my life. All right. I want to take these in place of a better eating habits and in place of better exercise habits. So let's keep those thoughts in mind here. Okay. So not against medication. All right. Sometimes you need it, but it's a case by case basis. And unfortunately, cholesterol medication is something that studies have shown are overprescribed, right? So what I did is I pulled up a list of cholesterol medications, right? So if you're somebody who says, oh, my cholesterol's at an unhealthy level, these are some of the medications that you may be on, right? And they have different classes, right? They have statins, right? I'm just going to click this link here real quick. Statins basically block enzymes that make cholesterol. Okay, long story short, they're basically blocking the things that produce cholesterol. So when you take a statin, that's what they do. Okay, let's see, where's the other one here that I want to show you real quick? I think it's this one. Yeah, cholesterol absorption inhibitors, right? So they basically reduce the amount of cholesterol that's absorbed in your body. There's other types, but those are some of the more common ones, right? So real quick, what I want to do, and this is a site, I encourage everybody, no matter what type of medication you're on, I encourage you, check this website out, right? And go look up your medication and see exactly what it's made of and what it does. And what I always like to do, and I discuss this with clients all the time, is let's talk about side effects. Because the problem with medication is a lot of times when it fixes one problem, it gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even more problems after that, right? So we're looking at a certain statin here, and then we can see, look at the common side effects. Get out of here. All right, side effects. Now remember, we said high cholesterol increases your risk of stroke. Okay, so we want to reduce cholesterol. But unfortunately, if you take this drug, you may have increased your risk for stroke. Let that sink in. You're trying to reduce your risk for stroke, but if you take certain drugs, you may increase your risk of stroke. And as you see, there's other side effects: UTIs, insomnia, muscle spasms, pain, etc., etc., right? And I'm not going to go through all these lists, but I did just want to click on a few side effects here again for cholesterol absorption inhibitors, right? All right. So now we have bleeding gums, we have chills, we have constipation, we have fast heartbeat, indigestion, muscle cramps and spasms. I'm not going to read them all, but it's a long list. All right. Let's just randomly pick one more before we move on and wrap up. I don't know. Side effects, right? Bladder pain, cough, fever, headache, joint pain and swelling, muscle ache, stuffy runny nose, swollen joints, problems breathing. I don't think I want that, right? I don't think I want problems breathing, right? So again, the point is, yes, there are cases where you may need to be on medication to fix cholesterol issues, but it's not a long-term solution per se, and it can cause more problems. And generally what happens when you take one pill to fix one problem, and now you have another problem, and you take more pills to fix that problem, and they give you more problems, you take more pills, you're going to end up like this guy looking at his medicine cabinet or his pill counter, and you're going to be overwhelmed and confused and tired of all the medications, right? So what should we be doing here exactly to lower our cholesterol? Well, we want to concentrate on our lifestyle and our nutrition, right? So some of the foods that you could start implementing today, and again, always check with your physician when you're making changes to medication and nutrition, right? But some of the things that you could do right now, right? Start eating more oats. And as we go through this list real quickly, you're going to see a theme with all of these foods, right? So oats, right? Here's the theme. Where's that word that I'm looking for? High in fiber, right? Add oats to your diet, right? Barley and other whole grains, high in fiber, okay? Start adding that to your diet, right? Beans, great. They have a great nutrition, all types of things, protein, and also full of, where is it at? Fiber, right? Man, why does fiber keep popping up? We'll do that in just a second, right? Here's another one, eggplant or okra, fiber, right? What about nuts, all right? These are good for for lowering LDL, okay? And they're also a good source of protein, okay? Certain types of oils helping lower LDL. Again, remember we said we want this one low. Here's that word again. Eating lots of apples, grapes, and other types of fruits. Fiber, 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 okay? So what is the deal with fiber? Well, long story short, fiber is kind of like a heat-seeking missile for finding fat and getting it out of your body. All right, so high fiber diets, low fat, high fiber diets are one of the best things you can do for reducing your cholesterol, reducing your blood pressure, reducing the strain on your heart and your blood vessels as well, okay? So long story short here, change your eating habits, all right, today, if you know that you're somebody who suffers from high cholesterol. And last but not least, obviously, we need to get moving. We need to move more, exercise, all right? There's so many benefits of exercise, and yes, one of those is healthy cholesterol levels. One of the best thing about exercise is it actually helps raise your HDL, all right? So it increases your HDL, which of course we know is something that helps remove bad cholesterol throughout your body, right? So exercise, 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 and eat foods with high fiber, okay? So look, that is it, right? Again, cholesterol, yes. Is it something that we need? Absolutely. It helps make vitamins and hormones, but too much of it can be a bad thing. Be wary of medications at times because they do come with side effects and they can cause other problems. And remember, the best thing we can do is change the way we eat and to change the way we move, all right? Don't see any questions. Normally at the end, hey, we do Q&A. Don't see any questions in there right now at this time, but always feel free to comment on this video at a later date. If you check out the video later and you have a question, pop a comment on there. I'll be happy to respond at any time, all right? Remember, live streams every Monday and Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time, and also every Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time, always followed by Ask Me Anything live Q&A. Remember, make sure you